This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
It's fall, so let's make some apple oatmeal bars. Well, the first thing we need to do is make our apple filling, which for this bar cookie is actually applesauce. And I make a real rustic type of applesauce, and these are actually apples from my apple tree in the backyard. And we need to start with about 2 pounds of apples. Now, I'm using Golden Delicious, but you could pretty much use anything that you've got on hand. So for this applesauce, I don't bother peeling the apples. I just wash them really well, use my melon baller to take out the center. And because I want sort of a medium dice, I take a half, I cut it into fourths, and then I run a blade 2 or 3 times through the apple. It kind of depends on, how big your apples are. And then I just put them into a small pot. Now that's going to go on a medium-high heat with just a little bit of water, only 1/4 of a cup of water, and then 1/4 of a cup of sugar. And I'm going to use a wooden spoon. I'm going to kind of mix that together. I want the sugar to kind of dissolve into the water a little bit. And then I'm going to let these apples cook really in their own juices. So I'm going to put a lid on this, and I'm going to go ahead and put the timer on for about 2 minutes till I really start getting steamy like this. And then I'm going to turn the heat down to medium, and I'm going to go ahead and cook it for anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. And every now and then when it looks like I need to, I go ahead and give it just a little bit of stir. And you'll notice that the apples start to soften. Now, after about 20 minutes, I'm going to turn the heat off because the apples are cooked through, and you can use a wooden spoon to kind of break them up, but I like to use a potato masher. So I just pull the pot off the heat and use my potato masher to kind of break those apples up a little bit. Now I wait till the end like this to start adding my flavorings to the apple. So the first thing I'm going to do to give it a nice rich flavor is I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm going to go ahead and get that stirred in with a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then to really make this applesauce taste fresh and bright, I get the zest of 1 lemon, and I just use my microplaner and I put that in, and I just stir all those ingredients up together. But I want to make sure that that butter gets completely melted. And then once that's together, I want to get this out of the pot because I want it to start to cool a little bit. So I just find a little bowl, and you'll notice this is not a really, really juicy applesauce, but it will be perfect for our filling. So now that the applesauce is done, we're going to go ahead and get an 8 or a 9-inch square pan, and I'm going to use some of the baking spray, the kind that has a little bit of flour in it, and I'm just going to lightly spray it. And because it is a bar cookie, I like to make a sleeve, so I get a piece of parchment that's the width of the pan. I place that inside, kind of crease the edges just a little bit, and then I'm going to do one final spritz on the inside. Now we're going to make the crumb part of this bar cookie, and we're going to start by getting a cup of flour, and we're going to put that in a little bowl. And then I'm going to get a cup of quick cooking oats. So this would be like what you'd make oatmeal with, but the quick cooking kind. So add a cup of that. And then for the sweetness, we're going to use brown sugar, about 2/3 of a cup of that. I do want a little lift, so I'm going to add a 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. And then I'm going to use my pastry blender just to sort of mix all those ingredients together. Now to turn this into a crumb, we need to get a 1/2 cup of butter. And what I do is I take the stick, I cut it in half, I cut it in half again, and then I cut it into little a dice, basically. It makes it easier to break the butter up if it's smaller to start with. And then I just sort of crumble it into the dry ingredients. And again, I get my pastry blender and I start to cut in this butter. Now, I wanted to show you how I do this. I go through and I do sort of a rough cut, trying just to get the butter moistened, and then I use my finger and I push that butter off the pastry blender, and then I go ahead and do it again. And each time I do that, I find the particles of butter get smaller and smaller. Now, after I do this about 3 times, because this is a crumb mix, it's not like pastry for a pie or something, then I go in with my hands. Now, when you're really wanting to make a crumb, when you get to this point, using your hands is the best thing, because what you're doing is you're warming that butter up and you're bringing the dry ingredients together with the butter. And normally, like if you were making a pie crust, you want little pea size bits because you're going to roll it out. Well, we want this crumb. So you'll notice I'm really trying to pull it together in very big pieces. And that's what I do. I'm actually squeezing the butter and the dry ingredients together. Now, these bar cookies have the crumb for the bottom and for the top. So we're going to take 3/4 of a cup of the crumb and set that aside for our top. And then we're going to take the rest of it and put it into the pan that we've prepared. Now, first thing we need to do is kind of push those crumbs around so they're a fairly level in the pan, and then I'm just going to take my hand and start to press them down. Now, it's real important, since this is the base of our cookie, that it be fairly level and pretty compressed. Then go to our cooled applesauce and measure out about 1.5 cups of that. And then what we're going to do is just take that apple filling and put it right on top of the crumbs. We don't pre-bake that. We just put it right on top, and then use a large spoon to press that applesauce in a nice even layer all across the bottom crust. Now, when you're doing this, you may find that you need just a little bit more applesauce. And so what you do is then you just go back and add a couple little dollops of it and fill in. We're not going to be using all of the applesauce, so just use as much as you need. Then it's time to put our crumb topping on. So go back to your 3/4 of a cup of crumbs and sprinkle those on top. And see, I don't want it to be fine. I want there to be some nice chunks of crumb on top. Now, this is going to go into a 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. And when it comes out, it's going to look nice and golden brown. Now, we want to set the pan on a rack and let it cool for just about 10 minutes. And then I'm going to come through with a knife, and I'm just going to run it along the edge where there is no parchment to kind of loosen it. And then I'm going to lift the sleeves up and pull it right out of the pan. It comes out really easy. And then it's just going to sit and cool on that rack. Well, as you can see, these bars cut up beautifully. They hold their shape. They're easy to eat. And it's because we have that great crumb crust on the bottom and that nice thick apple filling on top. Well, if you're looking for a way to use some of your apples, give these apple oatmeal bar cookies a try. Now, if you want the recipe, just go to our website. And if you have any questions, send me an email. I'll see you next time.